I turned 101 years old last month. My name is Harold Brennan, and I've spent the last decade watching almost everyone I knew disappear. The question people ask me most often now isn't how I'm doing or what my secret is. They ask me why I'm still here when so many others aren't. I don't have a simple answer for them. I never ran marathons or drank green juice or followed some strict routine, but I've been thinking about it, turning it over in my mind during those long, quiet hours when you're awake before dawn and the house is still dark. And I've come to realize that longevity isn't what most people think it is. It's not one big choice you make. It's a collection of small, strange things that add up over decades in ways you don't notice until you're the last one left in the room. When I was 73, my doctor told me something that stuck with me. He said that the people who live the longest often aren't the ones who seem the healthiest at 40 or 50. They're the ones whose bodies learned how to be inefficient. I didn't understand what he meant at first. Inefficient sounded like a criticism, like something you'd want to fix. But he explained that our bodies, when they're running at peak performance all the time, burn themselves out faster. The people who coast a little, who don't push every system to its limit, tend to keep going longer. It's like driving a car gently instead of flooring it at every light. I thought about my brother when he said that. Thomas was 2 years younger than me, and he was always the vital one, the energetic one. He ran 5 miles every morning until he was 78. He had the discipline I never had. But he died at 81. Suddenly, his heart just gave out one morning after his run. And I remember thinking at his funeral that maybe his body had been working too hard for too long. Maybe mine, with all its little slowdowns and inefficiencies, was learning how to last. There's something else I noticed over the years, something about purpose, but not the kind of purpose people usually talk about. Everyone says you need a reason to get up in the morning, some grand mission. But I think the people who live longest have smaller, more immediate reasons. My neighbor Clara lived to 97, and every single morning she fed the stray cats in the alley behind our building. That was it. That was her purpose. Not changing the world, not leaving a legacy, just making sure those cats had food. When she finally went into the hospital for the last time, she made me promise I'd keep feeding them, and I have, every morning for 4 years now. I read somewhere recently that scientists have found people who maintain what they call weak social ties tend to live longer than people who only have close family. That surprised me at first, but then I thought about it, and it made sense. It's the checkout clerk you chat with, the mailman you wave to, the woman at the library who knows you like mysteries. Those little connections, the ones that don't demand anything from you but keep you tethered to the world in gentle ways. My wife passed 16 years ago, and my children live in different states, but I know the names of 6 people I see regularly in my daily routine, and they know mine. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's more than enough. There's a strange thing about body temperature that I learned about 5 years ago when I was having some tests done. The nurse told me my resting body temperature runs about half a degree cooler than average. She said it like it was just a curiosity, but then the doctor mentioned that lower body temperature has been linked to longevity in study after study. Something about metabolism, about the rate at which cells age. I've always run cold. My wife used to complain about my cold feet in bed. I wore extra sweaters when everyone else was comfortable. I thought it was a defect. Turns out maybe my body was just conserving itself, burning slower, lasting longer. Sleep is another strange one. I've never been a good sleeper. Even as a young man, I'd wake up 3 or 4 times a night. It drove me crazy for years. I tried everything to fix it. But somewhere in my 80s, I read that people who wake during the night, who have what they call fragmented sleep, sometimes live longer than people who sleep straight through. Something about the body's repair systems, about the natural rhythms we had before electric lights and alarm clocks. My broken sleep wasn't broken at all. It was just old, older than modern life, and my body was following a pattern humans had followed for thousands of years. I've never been an optimistic person. I don't wake up with gratitude or positive affirmations. I'm aware of my aches, my limitations, the way my hands shake now when I try to open a jar. But I'm not pessimistic either. I'm somewhere in the middle, and I've read that this matters more than people realize. They call it defensive pessimism in the research. It's when you expect things might go wrong, so you prepare, but you don't catastrophize. You just stay ready. I think about my friend Robert, who was relentlessly positive, who refused to believe anything bad could happen to him. He didn't go to doctors. He ignored symptoms. He died at 74 from something that could have been caught early. And I think about my cousin Margaret, who was convinced everything was falling apart all the time. The stress ate her alive. She made it to 76. I'm neither of them. I expect problems, I prepare for them, but I don't drown in them. Maybe that's the balance that lets you keep going. There's something about muscle mass that nobody told me mattered until I was already old. The doctor explained it when I was 92 and recovering from a fall. He said that people who maintain muscle, even just a little bit, recover from illness and injury faster as they age. And it's not about being strong or looking fit, it's about having reserves. I've never lifted weights or done any formal exercise, but I've always walked. I've always taken the stairs when I could. I've always carried my own groceries, small things, unremarkable things. But my body held on to just enough muscle to catch me when I fell, to heal me when I broke, to keep me moving when others stopped. I think about food differently now than I did when I was younger. Everyone has opinions about diet, about what you should and shouldn't eat. But I've noticed that the very old people I've known didn't follow diets. They ate what was available, what they enjoyed, but they stopped when they were satisfied. Not full, satisfied. There's a difference. My grandfather, who lived to 96 back when that was rare, used to push his plate away when he was about 80% done. He'd say he was saving room. I thought he meant for dessert, but now I think he meant for his body to breathe, to not be constantly overwhelmed with digestion. I started doing the same thing in my 70s without really thinking about it. Now I understand why. Stress is the thing everyone talks about, how it kills you, how you need to eliminate it. But I don't think that's quite right either. I've had plenty of stress in my life. I lost jobs, lost people I loved, faced financial troubles, health scares, all of it. But I never tried to eliminate stress. I just never let it become my entire experience. I had a colleague once who would come home from work and spend the whole evening replaying every difficult conversation, every problem. He took stress home with him and let it sit at his dinner table. I learned early on to leave work at work, to leave worry at specific times and then set it down. Not because I'm disciplined, but because I get tired. And maybe that tiredness, that inability to sustain high stress for long periods, is what protected me. The last thing I'll say, the thing that might sound the strangest, is about boredom. I've been bored a lot in my life, long stretches of routine, of repetition, of nothing particularly exciting happening, and I used to think that was a waste, that I should be out experiencing things, chasing novelty. But I've read now that people who tolerate boredom well, who don't need constant stimulation, often live longer. Something about stress hormones, about not constantly activating your fight or flight response. My life has been quiet. Some might say too quiet. But my body wasn't running on adrenaline year after year. It was just existing calmly in the slow passage of ordinary days. I don't know if any of this is why I'm still here. Maybe it's just genetics, just luck, just the random distribution of time. But when I look back at my 101 years, I don't see one big secret. I see 1,000 small things I did without knowing they mattered. I see a body that ran cool and slow and inefficient. I see connections that were wide but not deep. I see sleep that was broken but natural. I see expectations that were realistic but not defeated. I see muscles that stayed just strong enough. I see plates pushed away before they were empty. I see stress that was felt but not sustained. I see boredom that was accepted instead of fled from. Maybe longevity isn't something you achieve. Maybe it's something you allow. Maybe the people who live longest aren't the ones who fight the hardest or optimize the most. Maybe they're just the ones who learned how to let their bodies do what bodies do best when you don't push them too hard. Coast a little, rest when you need to, stay connected in small ways, expect problems but don't live in them. Keep just enough strength, eat just enough. Feel your stress but put it down, accept your quiet days. I'm 101 years old and I'm still here. Not because I did everything right, but maybe because I didn't try so hard to be perfect. Maybe that's the real secret nobody wants to hear. That lasting isn't about intensity, it's about endurance. And endurance is just the art of not burning yourself out before your time is up.